Hello student. In last lecture we see the what is meant by respiration, its types and human respiratory systems anatomy. So in today's lecture we see the mechanism of breathing and O2 CO2 transport. So let's start today's lecture, that is respiration, lecture number 3. So we know that the respiratory system consists of tubes that filter incoming air and transport it into the microscopic alveoli where gases are exchanged. Okay, so in this process the air is taken in by inspiration through the external nostril. It passes through the nasal cavity, internal nostril, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, terminal bronchioles. So all these are non-respiratory parts. So they convey the air into the air sac where the exchange of gases take place in alveoli. So entire process of exchanging gases between atmosphere and body cells is called as respiration, which consists the following process, that is ventilation, gas exchange between the blood and lungs, gas transport in bloodstream, gas exchange between blood and body cells, and cellular respiration. So let's start with breathing mechanism. So during breathing, the movement of air in and out of the lungs are formed. So it is composed of inspiration and expiration, in which the inspiration means inhalation of oxygen and expiration means expellation of carbon dioxide. So let's start with inspiration. So during inspiration, the atmospheric pressure play an important role to force the air into the lungs. So when pressure inside the lungs are decreased, higher pressure air flow in from the outside. So mostly we know that air flow from higher concentration to lower concentration, or higher pressure to lower pressure. So during inspiration, in lung side or inner side of lungs, the low pressure are created and the outer environment having higher pressure, so that the air move from higher pressure to inside of lung where the low pressure are formed. So mostly air pressure inside the lung is decreased by the increasing the thoracic cavity. So we know that during inspiration our thoracic cavity get expand, but before inspiration our thoracic cavity get relaxed so that size get increased. The diaphragm get relaxed and thoracic cavity size are increased, so that the pressure get decreased due to this increase in size of thoracic cavity. And due to this, the surface tension between two layers of pleura, the lungs follow with the chest wall and expand. During inspiration our chest wall get expand. So mostly in this process, the muscles involved in expanding the thoracic cavity include diaphragm and external intercostal muscles. So during inspiration, our diaphragm get contract and thoracic cavity get expand. So mostly these muscles are involved during the expanding of thoracic cavity. So as the lung expand in size, superfectant keeps the alveoli from sticking to each other so they do not collapse when internal air pressure is low. Mostly we know that the alveoli are very thin cellular air sac where the air, oxygen and carbon dioxide, O2 CO2 transport are take place. Let's see in the diagram what actually happened during the inspiration and expiration. So this is the figure. So you can see that this is breathing in and this is breathing out. Breathing in means inspiration, that is inhalation of oxygen, and breathing out means expellation of carbon dioxide. So during inhalation, when we inhale the gas, our chest get expand and this diaphragm get contract, and during expiration the chest get contract and diaphragm get relax. So during relaxation of diaphragm, the thoracic cavity size get increased. So due to this increase in thoracic cavity, the atmospheric pressure get low, so that the next cycle start, that is breathing in, that is inspiration. So when atmospheric pressure get inside low, the outer environmental air which having the higher pressure move inside the lungs and chest get expand, and during this the diaphragm get contract, so that thoracic cavity get contract. So let's see the next mechanism, that is expiration. So during expiration, the force of expiration are due to the elastic recoil of lungs and muscle tissue and form the surface tension within the alveoli. So mostly the forced expiration is aided by the thoracic abdominal wall muscle that compress the abdomen against the diaphragm. During expiration, mostly the when we forcefully inhale the gas, forcefully expel the gases, our thoracic cavity and abdominal wall muscle get compressed against the diaphragm. So next point is respiratory air volume and capacity. So mostly the measurement of different air volumes is called as spirometry. It describing four distinct respiratory volume. They may be tidal volume, vital capacity, residual volume, or dead space. So firstly, let's see the tidal volume. So one inspiration followed by expiration is called as a respiratory cycle. When we inhale the gas, we have to expel the carbon dioxide. That is one respiratory cycle. So during this, the amount of air enter or leave the lung during one respiratory cycle is called as tidal volume. Or in simple way, we can say that the amount of air moving in and out of the lung during each breath is called as tidal volume. Point is inspiratory capacity. So during forced inspiration, an additional volume get inside our lung side. So when we inspire or forcefully inspire, the more additional volume of air get inside our lung. This more or additional volume of air is called as inspiratory reserve volume, which is inhaled by the lungs, and this inspiratory reserve volume plus tidal volume give us the inspiratory capacity. Let's see the next point, that is functional reserve capacity. So during maximal forced expiration, that is exhalation of carbon dioxide, an expiratory reserve volume can be exhaled. Means more or additional gases get exhaled outside environment, but there remain a residual volume. Residual volume means the amount of air remaining inside in lungs during expiration is called as residual volume. So this expiratory reserve volume plus residual volume give us the functional reserve capacity. So next is vital capacity. So vital capacity is tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve plus expiratory reserve volume combinedly called as vital capacity, or in other word we can say that the volume of air or maximum volume of air which can be ventilated during forced breathing is called as vital capacity of lungs. So mostly the vital capacity plus a residual volume is called as total lung capacity. So vital capacity, we know that what is meant by vital capacity. So vital capacity is the maximum volume of air which can be ventilated during the forced breathing. So it is called as vital capacity, where the residual volume is the amount of air remaining inside the lung during the forced expiration. So that is residual volume. So both these, when we add both this capacity or volume, we get the total lung capacity. Or in other word, we can say that the total lung capacity of human lung is about 5 to 6 liters. Although 500 ml of fresh air is breathed during the each inspiration, only part of this air reach the alveoli. The rest of air fills the nasal cavity, trachea, bronchioles, etc. So the air contained in these tubes, which is about 150 ml, is called as dead space. So this dead space may be having two types, that is anatomical dead space and physiological dead space, where anatomical means the volume of air present in the non-respiratory tube is called as anatomical dead space, where the volume of air present in non-functional alveoli is called as physiological dead space. So these are the capacities or breathing mechanism of lung. Next point is alveolar gas exchange. The alveoli are the only site of gas exchange between the atmosphere and the blood. We know that the O2 pass into the blood from alveoli and CO2 pass from the blood into the alveoli. So mostly the alveoli are tiny sac clustered at the distal end of alveolar duct. So these respiratory membrane where the actual O2 CO2 transport are formed is made up of epithelial cell of alveoli and endothelial cell of capillary. So this epithelial cell of alveoli and endothelial cell of capillary, this cell membrane get fused together to form the respiratory membrane where the actual gas exchange occur. So what happened during the diffusion across the respiratory membrane? So mostly gas diffuse from area of higher pressure to lower pressure. We know that the air move from higher pressure to lower pressure. So each gas having the portion of the total gas pressure. So the amount of pressure each gas exert is equal to its partial pressure. So when the partial pressure of oxygen is higher in the alveoli, we know that when we inhale the gas, the oxygen level is increased in the alveoli. So that the partial pressure of oxygen is also higher in alveoli than the capillary blood, because capillary blood having the low pressure of the oxygen. So that oxygen will diffuse into the blood because it having the higher content in the alveoli. So it move from alveoli to blood. So in opposite, for carbon dioxide, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is greater in blood, because blood collect the all the carbon dioxide from the tissue, so that the higher content of the or higher pressure of carbon dioxide is greater in blood than the alveolar air, so that carbon dioxide move from blood to the alveoli, so that carbon dioxide will diffuse out of the blood into the alveoli and then it expel out the environment. So number of factor favor increase in diffusion. They may be more surface area, shorter distance, greater solubility of gases, and the steeper partial pressure gradient. So next point is respiratory pigment. So in human being, we know that the hemoglobin is a respiratory pigment present in blood. So mostly it occur in the blood corpuscle. So this hemoglobin occur in all vertebrates. So mostly in few holothurians, several crustacean, chironomous insect, parasitic nematodes, flatworms, protozoa, they are also containing this hemoglobin. It occur in the blood corpuscle of the vertebrates. So the hemoglobin is also found in the muscle of blood and mammals. The hemoglobin that is present in the muscle of birds, it's called as myoglobin. It helps to store the oxygen temporary in the muscles. So it has the molecular weight about 68,000 Dalton. So hemoglobin is a chromoprotein, that is conjugated protein. It is composed of two components, namely the protein component is called as globin, where non-protein component called as heme. Globin is form of 4 polypeptide chain. Out of these 4 polypeptide chain, 2 are identical, are called as alpha chains, and alpha chain is form of 144 amino acid, where the other 2 identical chains called as beta chain, and each beta chain contain the 146 amino acids. So the heme is non-protein. It is form of iron and polyferrin. So mostly hemoglobin combined with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. This combination is loose. So at low oxygen pressure, it leaves oxygen from reduced hemoglobin. One hemoglobin molecule can combine with the 4 molecules of oxygen. So mostly the hemoglobin transport O2 from the lungs to the cell and CO2 from cells to lungs. It is gas transport. So mostly we know that the atmospheric air enter in the lung by the inspiration, and from the lung oxygen diffuse into the blood. So the blood carry the oxygen to the cells, and the cell take up the oxygen for oxidation process to produce the energy. So oxidation release the carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide from the cells diffuse into the blood. The blood carry the carbon dioxide to the lungs from the alveoli. So the transport of O2 from the lungs to cells and the transport of carbon dioxide from cells to lung is called as transport of gases. So let's see the first point, that is oxygen transport. So the transport of O2 from lungs to the cells is called as O2 transport or oxygen transport. So mostly we know that the lung contain the atmospheric air. From the lungs, O2 diffuse into blood, and blood transport O2 from the lungs to the cell. So this is also called as the oxygen transport. So mostly the O2 is transported by the plasma and the hemoglobin present in the RBC of blood. So O2 dissolve in water of plasma to form the physical solution. It is transported to the tissue. Only 3% of O2 is transported in the plasma as a solution. So over the 98% of oxygen is carried in the blood, bound to the hemoglobin of the red blood cell, producing the oxyhemoglobin. Let's see in figure. So this figure is about the oxygen transport or loading of the oxygen in the lungs. So in this figure you can see that the alveoli having the oxygen content is more, and this is blood capillary or blood vessel where the oxygen pressure or oxygen content is lower. So that higher pressure oxygen move to the blood to and bind to the hemoglobin. We know that the hemoglobin bind to 4 molecules of oxygen. So about 97% of oxygen bind to the O2, and just only 3% present in the plasma of blood cell. So when the oxygen bind to hemoglobin, it form the oxyhemoglobin when the oxygen pressure in the blood is high. Similarly, it dissociates readily with the oxygen when the oxygen pressure is lesser in the blood. So, in this, the alveolar capillary of the lungs, okay, this alveolar capillary of lungs, the O2 pressure is higher. Hence, here Hb combine with the oxygen and to form the oxyhemoglobin, that is HbO2. So each Hb molecule combine with 4 molecules of oxygen. So oxyhemoglobin is unstable in area where the concentration of oxygen is low and give up its oxygen molecule in those areas. So that is oxygen transport to the cells. So more oxygen is released as the blood concentration of carbon dioxide increase. As the blood become more acidic, as blood temperature increase. So in this figure you can see that the oxygen transport or unloading of O2 into the tissue. So how it happen? So oxygen carrying capacity of hemoglobin is the amount of oxygen transported by 1 gram of the hemoglobin. It is about 1.34 ml per gram. So in this situation, when the from lungs the oxygen rich blood enter into the heart and it pump to the various organ. So the cells present in tissue of various organ consume the oxygen continuously. Hence the oxygen pressure in tissue or organs will be lesser. So what happened? So in this figure you can see that this is HbO2, that is oxygenated oxygen, where the oxygenated hemoglobin, that is oxyhemoglobin, and this is the cells or tissue which having the more carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide having the higher pressure in cell and oxygen having the higher pressure in blood vessels. So oxygen move from the blood vessel to cells where the carbon dioxide, where the its pressure is more in cell, it move to the blood vessels. So oxygen dissociate and get enter into the cell where carbon dioxide bind to the hemoglobin to form the carboxyhemoglobin, that is unloading of oxygen. So, or in other word, let's see again. Okay, so when oxygen rich blood pass through the tissue, hemoglobin dissociate from the oxygen and the O2 diffuse out from the blood through the capillary wall and enter into the tissue or cell. So the Hb return to the lungs and again transport new oxygen molecules, so that the venous blood contain 50 ml of oxygen per 100 ml of blood. So that is unloading of oxygen to the tissue. So next point is Bohr's effect. So what actually Bohr state? The high concentration of carbon dioxide in tissue decrease the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. So in this figure you can see that the higher concentration of carbon dioxide in tissue decrease the affinity of oxygen to bind with the hemoglobin. So it helped to unload the oxygen from the oxyhemoglobin, and it is called as Bohr effect. It helped to unload the oxygen from the oxyhemoglobin. So it is called as Bohr effect, which is named after the Bohr. So mostly in this we can say that the CO2 concentration is higher in tissue. When the blood containing HbO2 pass through the tissue, the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen is reduced. So because of higher concentration of CO2 in the tissue, hence Hb separate from the O2 and O2 release for the utilization of tissue, that is for the oxidation to prepare the ATP molecules. So thus the increasing concentration of CO2 help to unload the oxygen from the hemoglobin. As a result of Bohr effect, the dissociation curve move to the right. So this is dissociation curve of Bohr's effect. So this curve showing the or move to the right. So this is, in this figure you can see that this is the carbon dioxide pressure. So this dissociation curve for different concentration of CO2 are given in this figure. So at high concentration of CO2 pressure, the oxygen pressure at which the hemoglobin becomes saturated with oxygen is higher than its low carbon dioxide pressure. So in the tissue, addition of carbon dioxide facilitate the unloading of O2 in the lungs, as the CO2 is given out from the blood and uptake of the O2 is facilitated. So all these are the concept regarding to oxygen transport. So let's see the how. Next point is carbon dioxide transport. So the transport of carbon dioxide from the tissue to lungs through the blood is called as carbon dioxide transport. So mostly carbon dioxide is continuously produced in the cell. So adult man produce about 200 ml of CO2 per minute. So it is toxic to the cells and cannot tolerate the accumulation of carbon dioxide. Hence the carbon dioxide must be eliminated, and it is done by the lungs, that is exhalation of the carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide formed in the cells and tissue is carried to the lungs by the blood. So mostly this CO2 transported by the both plasma and RBC. In last slide we see the how oxygen is transported in the plasma and blood. About 3% of oxygen carried out by plasma and 97% by the hemoglobin. Same as it is, the carbon dioxide is transported by the plasma and RBC, where the 70% of carbon dioxide is carried by the plasma, where the remaining 25% is carried out by the RBC. So CO2 carried out in the four forms. That is, first one is solution, then second is carbonic acid, third is carbino compound about 30%, and bicarbonates. So most carbon dioxide is transported in the form of bicarbonate. So first of all, as a solution, so CO2 diffuse into the plasma and dissolve in the fluids as a solution of the carbon dioxide. So it carried in a, from tissue about 7% of carbon dioxide. So mostly the carbon dioxide is formed in the or dissolved in the plasma in the form of carbonic acid, that is H2CO3. So in this figure you can see that this is H2CO3 where is formed. So mostly it is carried to the lungs, and in the lungs the reaction is reversed to release the carbon dioxide. That is, in tissue, the carbon dioxide react with water to form the carbonic acid, that is H2CO3, and this H2CO3 in lungs dissociate into carbon dioxide and H2O where they expel out the environment. So mostly in this figure you can see that this reduced form of hemoglobin react with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin, and this hydrogen ion is released. So this hydrogen ion react with the bicarbonate to form the carbonic acid. So this carbonic acid form dissociate into carbon dioxide and water. So this carbon dioxide move to the lung alveoli. So all this process happen in the blood vessel. So when the carbon dioxide is formed or dissociate from the bicarbonate acid, it transport to the lung alveolus, and O2 transport to the HbO2, and it transported to the tissue. So mostly O2 is taken into the blood from the lungs, and CO2 is released into the lungs from the blood. So mostly in this we can say that the mostly CO2 combine with amino group of the protein to form the carbino compound. This compound are carried to the lungs where the reaction is reversible. So mostly in this process we can say that the bicarbonates, mostly the about 63% of carbon dioxide is transported as a bicarbonate in RBC as well as in plasma. So most of the carbon dioxide entering into the blood from the tissue and diffuse into the RBC. So in this figure you can see that this is the cells, these are the cells, these are the cells, and this is the blood vessels. So in this you can say that the most of the carbon dioxide entering into the blood from tissue and diffuse into the RBC, and in RBC CO2 combine with the water to form the carbonic acid. So in RBC this reaction is accelerated by an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase. So this reaction, that is CO2 react with the water, is accelerated by the enzyme, that is carbonic anhydrase, to form the carbonic acid. So this carbonic acid is unstable and it immediately dissociate into H plus ions and bicarbonate ions, that is HCO3, and these H plus ions bind to the hemoglobin for the dissociation of oxygen, and this oxygen go inside of the tissue and hydrogen bind with the hemoglobin, and this reduced form of hemoglobin goes to the lungs to carry out the oxygen. So all this process is carried reversibly and repeatedly. So in this process you can say that the bicarbonate ion diffuse through the RBC membrane into the plasma, but H plus ion are retained inside the RBC. So to maintain the neutrality, chloride ion of plasma diffuse into the RBC, and this is called as chloride shift. So let's talk about the chloride shift. So the diffusion of chloride ion into the RBC from the plasma and back is called as chloride shift or Hamburger effect. So in what happened during chloride effect? So in this figure you can see all this process forming this. So this is the RBC, that is this is the RBC and this is the plasma. So CO2 dissolve in the plasma from the tissue. It get inside into the plasma and this CO2 enter then into the blood cell. So in blood cell, CO2 react with hydrogen in presence of carbonic anhydrase to form the carbonic acid. So this carbonic acid immediately ionize into the hydrogen and bicarbonate ions. So you can see in this, that is hydrogen ion and this is bicarbonate ions. So this bicarbonate ion are negatively charged and they diffuse into the plasma from the RBC, but the positively charged hydrogen ions remain inside the RBC. Thus the RBC become positively charged. So in order to maintain the neutrality, the chloride ion get inside or diffuse into the RBC from plasma. This phenomenon is called as chloride shift. So mostly chloride shift provide two advantage in CO2 transport there, as the bicarbonate ions, okay, these bicarbonate ions move out of the RBC, more and more bicarbonate ions are formed. And second one is the CO2 capacity of RBC is increased by the chloride shift. So all these processes occur during the O2 and CO2 transport. So in this figure you can see that the formation of bicarbonate, carbonic acid and hydrogen ions are take place. So what happen if abnormal formation of the hydrogen ions or bicarbonate ions are occur? The abnormalities in blood content are occur. So these abnormalities in blood gases content occur due to these bicarbonate or hydrogen we see in the next lecture. So that is for today. So in today's lecture we see the breathing mechanism. In this we see the inspiration and expiration, the capacities regarding to respiratory volume, and then the respiratory pigment, that is hemoglobin and its functions, and then the O2 CO2 transport. So all this phenomenon we see in this lecture. So in next lecture we see the abnormality regarding to gases content in blood and the nervous control, chemical control and its functions of respiratory system we see in the next lecture. So that is for today. See you in next lecture.